All right, Motorhead, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, everybody's hyped up over this launch of Robo taxis in Austin, and I think this is why the stock has been performing so strongly versus its horrible earnings. And if you look at there's some like you can look at various. There's like about 150 leveraged ETF longs on Tesla. There's one that has the
Wait, there's
ticker.
150 leverage long ETFs on Tesla. Did you say
Yep,
that?
over two times and over. And one of the more popular ones, TSLL, so TS double L.
Yeah.
This one, if you look at the volume, I mean, retail investors have been piling into this stuff, and this is, of course, having an impact on the share price. And I think it has to do this all has to do with the robo taxi pilot launch in Austin. Now, what's going to happen is like, okay, so they get it working, and let's say they do get it working. I mean, I highly doubt it. I'm actually putting my money where my mouth is and betting against it. But the point is that the car they're going to put it in is this cyber cab, and this cyber cab, which was shown at We Robot, their Robo Taxi Day event in October last year. It's got two seats, no steering wheel, and no brake or gas pedal.
What?
Yeah.
You
So
wait. It's got no. So wait,
no steering wheel.
so the person sitting behind in the driver's seat cannot control the car.
Exactly.
What?
Exactly. And this shit's not allowed on the roads by NHTSA. I mean, but there's something called the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, and you cannot have a car like that on the road. Musk was, saying on the Q3 call and repeated again on the Q1 call, they're going to do, 2 million units of this cyber cab in 2026. They're already starting to, ramp up the lines now.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but what was it? 2019. He was already promising these stupid self-driving cars or something. I can't even remember now.
Yeah, well, since 2016, he's been
All
saying.
right. Okay. All right. Keep going. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So to make a long story short, I'm thinking, and so if you look into the history of this, these autonomous vehicles that, like, for instance, Zooks. I don't know if you can just like Google, Zooks images, and it looks like a toaster on four wheels, and it can, I think it can ride like, I don't know, 4 to 6 people, and it doesn't have a steering wheel or any pedals either. But they only have about 15, and they can only use them in I think at the Amazon, I don't know, work area in California. But the point is that you need to get an exemption from NHTSA to be able to have an autonomous vehicle that's tested without the usual things that you have to have on there, like seat belts and stuff like that, and of course, uh, steering wheels and brake pedals and gas pedals. So to get an exemption is really, really hard. In fact, GM tried, and they never got it before it took 2 years, and then that horrible accident happened in San Francisco, and GM shut down Cruise. But anyway, the point is, they couldn't get it. The reason why Waymo is using an EV to do its robo taxis is because back in 2015, or sorry, even earlier than that, yeah, around 2014, 2015, they had tried to file for the exemption as well, to have a sort of like, robo taxi that doesn't need a steering wheel and pedals. I mean, this does save a lot of money on the car, which becomes the hardware of the robo taxi. So the point is that if and so what happened with Waymo was that it became so problematic, and their lawyers looked into the situation and said, you know what, scrap the you know no steering wheel plan and go for a regular car. And so that's what they did, and they're now the most successful robo taxi service in the world, I believe. I mean, they're doing 1 million rides, paid rides a month. So that shows you how tough it is. Now, what makes you think that Musk is going to be able to, and even if you get an exemption, that the highest amount of vehicles you can get to on the road to test is about 3,500. He wants to do 2 million units. So, I mean, if they didn't have this big fallout between, Musk and Trump last week, I would have said, okay, maybe, Musk has got something up his sleeve, or Trump can, help him, get NHTSA to change the regulations. But if you look into that process as well, it's not the president. It has to come from Congress. And the last time Congress voted on something like this was back in 2018, and it got killed in the Senate. And it got killed because I think there were 4 to 6 Democratic senators who said this is not good. It's because it's not safe. So to make a long story short, given this sort of legislative calendar, um, I think it's very difficult for anything to get done until after the midterm elections next year, and that's when Musk says that he thinks they'll be doing about they'll be at a run rate of around 2 million units of this stuff per year. So I'm just thinking, if they don't have Cybercab being produced, and believe me, they're well along the way. They've built the production lines. I think they've got the castings and the molds, which is the most expensive stuff. When you're putting together the equipment needed to make a car, you can't sort of go back and say, "Oh, this looks bad. We're gonna have to put a steering wheel in it and pedals." You can't do that. I mean, it just takes too much time. You'd have huge write-offs of a large part of the production system, and so what I'm trying to say is, like, not only is their current model lineup, it's the oldest in the industry. I think that's the average is like 4 to 5 years. Theirs is they're like close to 8 years old on average, on a weighted average, basis. So to make a long story short, without the Cybercab, they've got nothing, which means we're looking at I mean, if the economy, by the way, goes into recession while this happens and they have no new models, they're going to be burning cash, and that's basically what the report's about.
So before we go any further, so Motorhead's, he's no stranger to these rooms. He's along with Gordon, who hopefully will come up, two best Tesla analysts I know. Doesn't mean they've been the most right in the stock, but they do the best fundamental work. They've been more right in the numbers than anybody else. I can't help it that the number go up. Crowd keeps buying the stupid thing. Um, as Shrub said a few weeks ago in one of these spaces, um, the minute as soon as you realize the whole thing's a Ponzi, it all makes sense. So, like, we're stupidly discussing fundamentals here, Motorhead, but I digress. So, Motorhead, one question for you. Many of us have believe or assert or conspiracy theorists. We keep saying, he's above the law because, like, the stuff he's been able to get away with is just mind-boggling. All right, so clearly, I believe he's got friends in the right places. Okay. So the point you made, and this is really a legal point, so maybe it's beyond your pay grade, but you were saying it would require an act of Congress to, give the exemption from NHTSA or whatever. Is it actually an act of Congress, or could he just, maybe make a contribution to Howard Nutkick, or Navarro, one of these guys, and it'll all be in the stroke of a pen, it'll all be fixed behind closed doors, or does it require an act of Congress?
No, it requires an act of Congress, and if you check it out, you can see that they actually presented a bill in the Senate on May 15th, I believe it is, and it's doing the same thing again. So, and it's got Musk's fingerprints all over it. I mean, it's they're calling specifically for relaxation of standards that lead to not being able to take the wheel and pedals out of a car, right? So they're all. I mean, they've been by the way, on the transition team from November, they already had a staff unit specifically for autonomous vehicles. And I think these guys had already written this stuff. They already figured out who they're going to fire in NHTSA and stuff like that. And and to make a long story short, they presented this bill in the Senate on May 15th. There's some kind of it's called U.S. Gov. they survey things, and they're I looked it up. They're pretty balanced. They're not like biased, but they gave that bill a 5% chance of passing.
Wow. So Motorhead, let's just zoom out a little bit, put this in context. I forget the numbers, but Tesla last year for the first time had down units, as I remember, down 1% or something like that. And you and Gordon and Troy, Cheslake, whatever, you guys have all like been pointing out. I mean, the first quarter has been horrible. When I read your note, you were talking about, I think before you were like at down 10% units or something like that, but you were saying, hey, without the Cybertruck and this and that, I mean, God only knows how much units could be down this year. Or, and then as you pointed out, it's always the wait till next year. Like there's no real reason to think it's going to go up in 2026. So could you just kind of lay it out, like in terms of how much were units down? I mean, yeah, I think it was about 1%. So what do you think is going to happen to unit sales this year and next year? Well, it's sort of like a min-max probable thing. Because if this thing has like units down 10-15% this year, and then it's down again next year, which it should be if there's no new things coming, they can't do the Cybertruck. I mean, this could really implode pretty fast. I mean, okay, not implode because they don't have that much debt, but sort of like if we start talking about endowments in Ivy League universities, everyone thinks, oh, because they have a big endowment, they're okay. Not so fast. We'll get to that later. But like, what are your expectations for unit sales this year, next Motorhead, and what's the downside to them possibility?
Okay, so for this year, I think consensus is at 1.7 million. I'm at 1.4, and that's down 20%
Wait,
year on year.
wait,
Um,
hold on. Units, the consensus is 1.7. You're at 1.4, and what were sales last year in 24? Were they like 1.9 or something like that, or 1.95? I can't quite even remember. I mean,
in 2024 or in
yeah, yeah,
23?
no, on 24 because they had that. Their units were like down 1%, as I recall, last year already. Were they not?
It's I think it was 1.78 1.79 million units last year.
Okay, so down slightly 1%. The consensus is going for 1.7, which is like 5%. You're saying it could be 1.4 this year?
Yeah, I got 1.43 million units. It's down 20%.
Wait, and then let's just tease this out a little bit. Okay, so min max probable. Okay, so and if it goes like worst case scenario, if it goes the way you're thinking that it will, and I don't want to say worrying because you're short the stock, full disclosure. If it goes the way you hope it will, okay, how bad could it be next year? Down again in 26?
Yeah, I mean, they've got these sort of hybrid models that they're putting out. They're taking they're supposed to be out with a sort of tweaked Model Y, where I mean, instead of putting leather in, they'll just use cloth and take out the seat heaters and stuff like that. So it's going to be like no change from like the Model Y. It's just going to be cheaper. So they're coming out with a tweaked Model Ys, soon, and then a tweaked Model 3, I'm sure, after that. So that could add some volume, but it's going to cannibalize the sort of more expensive and profitable old Model 3s and Ys. So I think it's a wash at best. I think
Right.
I think the realistic scenario is that they actually cannibalize, the more
Yep.
profitable existing Model 3 and Y.
Yep.
So, I've got units down to 1.3 million, which is only down 8% year on year. But I'm thinking maybe that's a little bit optimistic the way things are going.
See,
George?
no, TX, no. Hold on, TX.
No,
No,
no, no,
no.
no, no, no. It's very important.
What? What? What?
Israel is striking. It has begun.
It has begun. Okay. Thank you, TX. The futures are down a lot, are they not, TX?
They're down quite a bit.
Yeah. Who could have possibly predicted this, right? So all the bulls will say everything would have been all right if it wasn't for the Israeli. Yeah, right. Okay, got it. Yep. Okay. So Motorhead, coming back to where we were. So what was I saying? Oh,
About volumes
yeah,
next
the
year.
volume. So, given the tremendous negative operating leverage, if volume's down, and you're saying they're going to cannibalize, maybe so you could even have prices down, and who knows what happens to costs. I mean, what's your sort of current earnings estimate or lack thereof for 25, and what do you think it could be in 25 and in 26?
I'm a little bit embarrassed. I've got them making losses this year already. So and that's I would say mainly due to I would say 50-50. Half of it is due to the fact that the China tariffs are going to sort of really make their battery costs go up for their Megapack business, their energy storage business. So they use imported LFP batteries from China, so it's gonna whack them pretty hard. The other 50% of that is that they're going to, I mean, the price cuts that they're, the incentive programs they're putting on right now, these sort of aggressive low interest rate, loan programs, really attractive, lease deals and things like that. It's just going to really, I mean, Q1 was really bad. I mean, if you took out regulatory credits, it's the first time I think, since 2019 as well that they actually lost money at the operating level. So I've got them coming out with a slight operating loss this year, 2.3 billion.
Right.
That would translate to non-GAAP EPS of negative 28 cents. I've got that going to minus $1.24 loss next year.
And Motorhead, you know this because you and I have been doing auto stocks for years. There's always a tendency amongst analysts to underestimate leverage, operating leverage, both in the positive and negative direction. And so, as bearish as you are, and I'm not trying to egg you on, when things go bad, they can go really bad. And so, the only thing I would say in defense of Tesla, because they have such a huge market cap, they probably would issue stock, which of course would drive the stock price down. But there's no unless they just everything completely the toilet completely backs up. It's not just what you've outlined, but all the cars come back on leases and this, that, and everything else, and they're drowning in inventory, they're drowning in used cars. I mean, but the litmus test isn't whether they go bankrupt. That's not what we're talking about. Okay, it's just. I mean, Christ, if you were the CFO of Tesla and you had a $1 trillion market cap or whatever it is, it'd be like, yeah, your cost of capital, like you'd be an idiot not to raise equity. So, it would be disaster for the stock price. I think no.
Yeah, no, I mean, so yeah, I mean, there are very various scenarios. I think one thing people should, who are short Tesla, should be aware of is that there could be some kind of merger or acquisition with Musk's XAI, AI startup. And this, I mean, if I were like the CFO, I would probably be thinking maybe this is something that at least can hold up the valuations. And I don't know, maybe by doing something like that, or just doing, a combination of that plus an equity offering. I mean, they're going to need to raise money, and like you said, when things get bad in the auto industry, they can go bad very quickly. I mean, I always point to the example of Nissan, who had, I don't know, they had like tons of net cash. I mean, it was an immense amount, and during the COVID factory shutdowns, they burnt through nearly 80% of the net cash in 3 months. So that's how bad things can go.
Yeah, no, and people don't understand that, and that's why that's also just to outline. And when things are going well, and the upcycle, you can blow through the earnings estimates, to the upside because all the income, you get pricing, your income, the incremental leverage, goes in your favor, blah blah blah. But it also runs in reverse. So Motorhead, though, if you were the CFO of Tesla, like say you're them, okay,
Yeah.
and you started to say this before, you'd think about selling stock. You would use the overinflated currency of the other company and make, like you said, merge it, do something, some bullshit thing where it's like the three-car Monte. It's like, pay no attention to that car company. It's now an AI company or whatever. I mean, isn't that kind of like you do something in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I would, but still, I mean, then how do you square that with what they have? I mean, at the multiples that the real AI companies, like Microsoft, Amazon, those guys, they trade at like, I don't know, it's like 20 to 30 times earnings. It's like, and Tesla's here at like 180 times. So so
God
it's
forbid, yeah, God forbid, Motorhead, we put peas on things. I'm sorry for those of you who heard this story, but I have to tell this story. People love these crazy stories. And this is true. So this was like 2000, 99 or 2000. It's a true story. Motorhead, you'll get a kick out of this. So one of these internet things was trying to go public. And so they're doing the dog, they're going around the beauty contest. They go around to all the investment banking firms. This is why Gordon can't work at a big firm anymore. And they're going around, with their pitch book and telling the story, the whole thing. So they go to Goldman. This is a true story, actually. This is a true story. They go to Goldman and they're pitching it to the internet analyst, and they go through the whole spiel, and then they ask them at the end. They go, "Well, what do you think?" And the analyst or the bank or whoever it was, the Goldman team says, "Well, great presentation, except for one thing." What's that? In the out years, in your model, in your earnings model, you have the company making a profit. And the problem with that, Motorhead, is if you're making a profit, it's a true story. I'm not making this up. You can't make this up. If you're making a profit, if you have earnings, you can then put a PE on it. If you have no earnings, then you have to resort to, EV to sales, or back in the day, market cap per eyeballs and all that nonsense. So it's hilarious. I mean, the dream can endure as long as you're not anchored in some fundamental valuation. So it's exactly what you say. I mean, this is the way these guys roll. I mean, and so I don't know. And so MotorHead, and then you think about the fanboys, all your haters. Okay, they'll then chime in again. Well, it's a robotics company. Well, it's an AI company. It's an energy storage company. Blah 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 blah. I mean, it's like three card Monte, Motor. This is not. It just keeps on going. The narrative rotation is unbelievable with this company, with this stock.
Yeah, it's like I said, once again, it's all this FSD hype. And another thing I look at on the in the report on my pinned tweet is that I looked at the costs of Waymo. I'm still not like down to having a model for how much Tesla could make, or I actually think they're going to lose money. And the conclusion I came to very quickly is because so you have to have insurance, right? And I think that's where Tesla really sort of this whole FSD story gets knocked off, off its rockers. Is that the reason why Waymo is about to become really profitable, and I think the other great catalyst would be if Google listed Waymo, because it would trade at a massive valuation. And the thing is, everybody thinks, oh yeah, they're using a Jaguar, Jaguar I-Pace, Well, they're also in a deal with Toyota, and the costs will come down from a current, cost of around $180,000 per robo taxi, including all the gears, the sensors, the lidar, and all that stuff. It'll come down with Toyota to around $45,000, and I bet you any money that's what the cost of production per unit will be for Tesla, unless they get this Cybercab out on this new production system, which seems doubtful right now.
So Motorhead, we have an all-star panel now. To your immediate right, we have the inestimable Gordon Johnson. Gordon, welcome. How are you, my friend? I don't know if Gordon's been frozen out too.
Hey, George, how are you, sir?
Great. Motorhead and Gordon, you two guys know each other. You two guys are the all-stars. So I don't know, Motorhead, you want to ask Gordon a question? Or Gordon, you've been listening to Motorhead, you want to say a couple things, and I can let you two guys kind of debate it, or not debate it, probably pile on. We need to have a bull. By the way, if anyone knows the Tesla bull, please get them in here, because
It's me, George. It's me. I'm here.
Okay, all right, Nicholas, just
Well,
wait.
George,
Hold
this
on.
is Gordon. I wanted to provide a bull view, actually.
Okay, go ahead, Gordon. Go ahead.
So, in Motorhead, that was great, man. Thanks for that overview. Learned a lot.
Good to have you here, Gordon.
Yeah. So, when Tesla reported those earnings and the stock went straight up, there was a dark cloud over my head, and there still is every day. And I made a joke with George earlier, but we'll keep that one inside. But so, I have clients, and these guys trade stocks, right? And that's what they do all day. And two guys. One guy is at a huge short-based fund, and I thought he was getting crushed this year, and he's actually performing well. And I'm like, how the hell are you doing that? And I asked him about Tesla, and I'm like, man, what the hell is going on? We talk every day, and every day I complain about Tesla. And I just want to read you guys something he said. This is a guy who is a portfolio manager. He's been doing this since probably 2003, and I found what he said interesting. So I'm like, look, they reported earnings. I'm like, they missed GAAP earnings EPS by 62%. I'm like, can you imagine what would have happened to NVIDIA or Meta or Google if they missed by 62%? And he's like, this is his quote. Now I'm quoting him. Because you're short all the names that rally, when markets rallies. You have too much momentum factor in your portfolio. You're not short Tesla, you're short momentum. What happens when we bottom is the market pivots to buying momentum. And the short term trading is about factors, not about fundamentals. That's the market we live in now. The pods have entire armies of risk people neutralizing factors for this very reason. Unbeknownst to you, you're essentially just betting the market rather than the company. And I said, I hear you. So would you bet against Tesla ever? He says, it's fine, but you need an offset. If you're just short all the same Mo, then you're going to have vol and get stopped out. That's one guy. And another portfolio manager, I said in the same question, he responded, Tesla is its own beast factor-wise. You know, they keep using this factor term because most of the crap codes are short-term momentum, so they rip when markets rotate. But they are only short-term momentum as are perpetual decliners. So when breadth opens up, they mean revert. Tesla is a stock that has mostly gone up. So it can have the volatility of the short-term momentum names, but then become part of a longer-term momentum as breadth opens up and the bull market ensues. So, and he says it's tricky. So the point is, overall, I think that the reason why Tesla stock went up after those horrible earnings is because these guys trade the market, and that's how they're viewing it. This is what I consider smart money. So maybe that helps a little bit. I do think when the market trades lower, Tesla will underperform significantly. I also think there's fundamental reasons why it's going to underperform. But I think that's kind of the smart money explanation for why it's done so well.
Gordon, thank you very much for that. I think you're spot on. So, Gordon, could you just I mean, you were great. We had you on the YouTube. We did that wonderful interview a couple months ago. You were spot on, and now the big day is arriving with the self-driving cars. And you were talking about the robots and this and that and everything else. So, I mean, what would you want to add to what MotorHead said, or disagree, or whatever? I mean, fundamentally, and I'm sorry we have to talk about fundamentals. I know this is where handicap or left brain dominant. I get it, but what would you want to contribute or add about the fundamentals?
MotorHead did a phenomenal job. But one thing I would say is, I think it's, Tesla shorts, our Christmas is coming early. And the reason I say that is because I think the biggest mistake Elon Musk could have made is putting an expiration date on when robotaxi is coming. If I were Elon Musk, I would just perpetually delay this thing and allow the Dan Ives, the Kathy Woods, the Morgan Stanleys, the Gene Munsters of the world to just keep saying, hey, this is worth trillions next year, right? And he's been able to do that for in MotorHead. I think it's Dan O'Dowd has a video where he's talking about that dating all the way back to 2014. But it's funny, but it's not funny because it's reality, right? He's been doing this for years, and there's been other. I remember when I first started covering Tesla, the bull case was, they're going to take over. They're going to take over the solar industry, right? It was like they're going to be a solar company, and then it was a battery company, and then it was a semi company. But FSD has been constant, right? It's always been in the background. So I think that my point is this, George. I think FSD is going to be a phenomenal failure because very, very simply, vision doesn't work. And one of the prevailing theses now is that they're going to be acquired or they're going to merge with XAI. But I think that is significantly misplaced as well, because what I would say to that is, Tesla merging with XAI means virtually nothing. Why? Why would it? XAI is mostly focusing on LLMs, which are not really applicable at all for the task of driving a car. So this idea that they merge with XAI and then you have this amazing company, it's this pie in the sky theory. But when you look at the specifics, it doesn't make sense. So their car sales are imploding. We're at 343 for Q2. I think Troy's at like in the 360s now. I don't know where MotorHead is. And
I'm at 340.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and put it in context. The prior year was what, 410 or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's just 343 would be a disaster.
Yeah. So whether 340, yeah, but Gordon, hang on, guys. You guys forgot about it. Just everyone in the room understands. 343, 363, whatever. The prior year, I think, was like 410 or 415. So it's a hugely bad number, no matter how you slice it. Keep going, Gordon. I'm sorry.
Right. So, and then I'm speaking to Ford's head, the head of Ford's IR, amazing woman. She'll probably talk to anybody. She talked to me, doesn't know me. And what I asked her is, I said, hey, California getting rid of these CAFE standards, what does that mean? And she said, look, we in 2024 agreed to buy a total of, I think it's 4.6 billion worth of EV and GHG credits. And she said, so far we've bought 0.1 billion, right? She said, if the rules change, we're not buying any of them. And then I asked her, well, do you think Tesla has already recognized revenue on the credits that you've agreed to buy? And her response was, ask them. So I'm not trying to imply anything, but I think the negative implications from, you know, this reduction in credit revenue is going completely, under the radar, and it's not been factored in at all. And our calculation, we posted it to Twitter, was that this was worth about $61 a share, if you apply the current PE multiple. So I think this is a big deal. So when you factor in the weak auto sales, the brand damage done by Elon Musk, and this idea, oh, Elon Musk is coming back, I think that's bad for Tesla, right? The reason why people aren't buying is because they don't like Elon Musk. So I think all of these things are quite negative. But I think the biggest mistake made by Tesla so far, in addition to everything else, is putting an expiration date on robotaxis. Because I speak to this bull, and he's like, Gordon, they're going to scale. And I'm like, so how do you, I'm like, so what do you think about, I tell him, China cells imploding, Europe and cells imploding. By the way, MotorHead, I don't know if you're tracking production in the U.S. Troy's way off on that. So the production in the U.S., specifically at Austin, is down like 32% January through April, year over year. So U.S. is bad. So my point is this, and he's like, so the bull I talked to, and I respect this guy a lot. He's short some of the solar names. I'm short. He's a smart guy. He's like, the way I'm going to trade this is if they don't scale over the next month to 2 months, I'll start to sell some of my shares. So I think that's what some of the kind of fanboy smart money is going to do, and I don't think that's going to turn out so well.
Yeah. By the way, another thing I forgot to mention is I've got a contact in Shanghai, and he says that they're all buying the pants out of Tesla. And
What?
yeah, so you can see that the retail flows into Tesla and like some of these, like the leverage, the 2 times leveraged ETF I just mentioned, TSLL,
Yep.
TSLL. The volumes are like exploding in these things, and I think a lot of it is coming from China. He said they've got because they cannot, what they usually, I mean, they never were big, gamblers in the stock market because all their money was tied up in real estate. But now that it's like, ridiculous to try to, invest in real estate, they're all trading stocks and they're all buying Tesla. And this guy sent me a screenshot from his Weibo account, and it's like he's in a group chat, and all they're talking about is like, buying Tesla.
Wow. So yeah, I remember reading something earlier, MotorHead, about in Korea where they invest like crazy. I think Tesla and a few other, like, I don't know, Qs or whatever it was, some other high beta juice. These are amongst the most heavily traded stocks and buying that was coming out of Korea. So you know exactly. This is not exactly what you want to see. This is, as I always say, things you don't see at the bottom. This is not smart money. This is highly speculative money. So I mean,
Right, and this is why on the way down it can be just as, I think it'll be even worse on the way down. So
I agree with you. Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
don't have that many institutions in there. You've got retail who will get margin called.
Wow. Jeepers. So Nicola, did you want to tell a retort? Do you want to reply with any sort of a bull story, Nicola?
I do. I cannot bring the same level of technical analysis as the other greats on stage, but I'm here at a convention, and so I drove 8 hours from Sacramento down here to Palm Springs. And as I was driving straight down the I-5, my hands were cramping, my feet were getting tired, the cruise control in my car is broken, and I was thinking, wow, it would be really, really nice if I could just put my Tesla on self-driving. And I know it's not perfect, but it gets the job done in a lot of cases. And I came down here, and an older couple I was talking with, they are big Tesla heads. They're in the Tesla fan club, and they drove all the way from LA, full self-driving the whole way. They made the specific point to me. They said, as you get older, it becomes so convenient. The amount of self-driving that Tesla's got. So whether Waymo's better, that's a question. But I don't see too much trouble for Tesla to slap on maybe a couple LiDAR detectors to really improve. But these people were really bullish on Tesla. They said the self-driving has been improving incredibly. We came from LA. It drove from our house, got on the freeway, made all the turns, made it here. And they said they put on self-driving all the time. And so it really made me think. It might not be the best, but it's functional and there's something to it. And it's a great car.
So I don't know, Gordon or MotorHead, whoever wants to take this. I can't remember which of you guys wrote about this. You probably both did. But the number of incidents per umpteen trips, like I can't remember what it was, but the frequency of crashes or crossing the street or doing something wrong was still like unacceptably high. So Gordon or MotorHead, you want to speak to that or have any recollection of that? Either of you?
It's like over 2,100 as of April, I believe.
And how do you look at that? Is it like compared to perfect or compared to like what a human would do? Like
Oh no,
what's the way to look at it?
no, that's just the number of crashes on autopilot or FSD since July 2021.
Okay, and is that so? And is the standard meant to be perfect, or will the regulators look at it and say, no, well, it's 2,100 per umpteen million drives, and compared to humans, it's much better, blah blah blah. So this is okay.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, let's look. I mean, there's been 50, according to, NHTSA data, which is, all from Tesla, who lies. But there's been 54 deaths among these 2,100 plus crashes that they've had in 3 years. So, I mean, the Ford Pinto was shut down in 1977. They had a gas tank that was, incorrectly placed in the back, and whenever anybody driving in a Ford Pinto got rear-ended, the thing blew up. So they stopped after 27 people died. They completely closed down the program. We're at 54 deaths, and it's like no one's lifting a finger, So this is only. And this is why, I think the best article anybody can read about why Musk is powerful is like even before he got into the White House is by Ronan Farrow in the New Yorker. I believe it was like summer of 2023. One of the best articles I've ever read on Elon Musk. But the guy's being protected by the Pentagon, basically.
Because of like Starlink and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they need him for their spy satellite operations, and because of this, they're not letting NHTSA touch Tesla because they know it's a source of his. It's a sustenance for him, basically.
Hey, all right. Let's keep this moving. Let's bring others into the. So, Sam, do you have a question or comment about Tesla, Sam?
Yes, I do have a comment. I want to make it clear right off the bat that Tesla is on my no trade list because I used to try to short it because the valuation has been ridiculous forever, and I got burned, and I decided why play this game? There are easier ways to make money. But anyway, I never had the stock. About a year ago, I saw some of the FSD videos on Twitter when they first switched to neural nets, and I was curious. I never owned a Tesla. I didn't want an EV. I like Corvettes. Anyway, my girlfriend doesn't like to drive, so I went out and I found an old 2019 Model 3 with FSD paid for, and I bought it a year ago. I would say that was hardware 3, 12.2 or 12.3 version of FSD, early neural net version. It was about a 6 out of 10. It was interesting. It was a novelty, not that usable. Girlfriend never really used it. A year later, on hardware 3, 12.6.4, I would say it's about an 8 out of 10. It can do almost all the driving, and I was curious about hardware 4, which is the newer version. So when I went to Chicago a couple weeks ago, I rented one. If you're a bear on FSD, you're going to get your ass ripped off. Why not just focus? If you want to be a bear, that's fine. I don't care. The stock price is super expensive. Why not focus on the fundamentals of FSD? It's not going to be profitable, whatever. Make your argument there. I think if you're making your argument that the software is not going to work without LiDAR, I think you're just go on Turo, rent a hardware 4 car with version 13, drive it for 4 hours, and I think you'll change your mind if you're not yourself short the stock.
I think it's all factored in, everything you've said, if you're right.
Yeah, I mean, and you blocked me for polite disagreement a while ago because you think they're going to go bankrupt, whatever. They might, I don't know. But the thing is, what you said earlier is correct. They can dump billions of dollars on the Elon fanboys and they'll keep buying it. So why short the stock? Like we might make money, but there's easier ways to make money. That's sort of my
So
take.
Sam, I think what everybody is saying is correct here in the sense that it's one thing we can talk about the fundamentals. Sales are going to go up or down. FSD is going to work. It's not going to work. You're going to cut prices, raise prices. They're going to lose money, not lose money. That's fundamentals. But the stock price is a whole nother matter. So I don't think we should conflate the two necessarily. I've never seen a company is where so much of the value is so based on the future. And okay, you could say, yeah, there are other stocks as well, but nothing that was ever $1 trillion market cap. I mean, it's one thing if you got some rinky dinky, quantum computing thing, it's $200 million market cap and it's only a 10% float, nobody cares. This thing's in the S&P. It's like, it's $1 trillion cap. It's one of the top 10 or 20 market caps out there. So this is not child's play. So I think I triggered Gordon. Gordon, you want to weigh in?
Yeah. So Sam, I appreciate that, and you sound like my buddy who, the guy I was talking about who's short some of the solar stocks I've been recommending short. So he's not a dumb guy, and he told me like his car used to be. He said he literally gave me the exact same story. It's almost like you guys said the same thing, right? He's like, it used to be bad, now it's great, and like if you're short this, you're gonna get. He literally said your ass handed to you. I don't know if that's what you said, but my question to him and you is I'm just looking at Tesla FSD tracker right now, right? And I'm looking at the latest version, and city miles to critical disengagement 244, miles to critical disengagement 491, which means even though it's great, right, as you say, if thousands of these cars are operating unsupervised, right, you're going to have literally 1 to 2 accidents between each charge, right? The same data suggests Waymo has an accident once every, I think it's 2 million miles, and on average, a human being has an accident once every 700,000 miles. So 491 versus 700,000.
Can I
Like
reply to that? I mean,
when
it's a
you
good point.
provide
But
these
can I reply?
anecdotes that if you don't think this is going to work, your ass is going to get handed to you. What is your evidence? Because I just gave you mine. Thanks.
Let me reply. I think it's a fair point. I want to reply. My main point to that would be that the data collection method you're using between Waymo and Tesla, I have 2 points. Point one is that those two data collection methods are apples and oranges because one is from the company itself and one is I disengage all the time for various reasons. It's basically you're limited by who's participating in the program, where they're driving, how. There are a couple scenarios, various scenarios that I would say right now, the latest version is not trained on. The thing is, they haven't updated that software since December to the end user. So you're talking 6 months more of training. And also, they're not releasing unsupervised all at once. They're not going to flip a switch and be like, okay, have at it. They're going to do what Waymo did, which is start in a very small area, test really heavily, which is what they're doing in Austin, and basically attempt to make it work, which, based on my experience with the software, I don't think will be difficult in a constrained area. I guess a bear case would be, okay, they'll be able to get it to work in Austin, but then for some reason, they're not going to be able to scale that to other cities. But just based on the volume of data they're able to collect, based on how many cars they have out there, I don't buy it. I mean, the issues that right now don't work on version 13, like, for example, really thin gates are not detected by the software. Like, it's a known issue. There's no reason to think they can't train the software, or think of it as the brain, to detect that. They did it in the past. I saw, okay, this issue, it wouldn't detect this scenario or this scenario. It did more training, and then it did, and it detects it perfectly. So maybe, I mean, if you're a bear, what you really want to hope for, I don't want to sound crass, is some really catastrophic crash caused by the latest version of FSD that is clearly the software's fault and kills some people. If that happens, it'll be hallelujah for the bears. But right now, they're sharing Forbes articles, talking about FSD accidents from 2021 to 2022, which is misleading because the software didn't even work the same way at that point. So,
Sam,
what?
Sam, one question. I'm just doesn't it strike you odd that the company refuses to publish any data on FSD? I mean, just to give you an example, Waymo gave all their data out to everybody, and Swiss Re, an insurance company, went and validated it and said, yeah, they're right. Waymo is actually 90% safer than a human driver. And that's why Waymo's insurance costs are so cheap because of that.
Well, couple of things. I can't speak for Tesla, although as far as insurance, my guess would be that they're going to self-insure because they offer their own insurance product, which
they
I
don't.
use.
No. They don't have their. It's a third party, and Tesla doesn't have a balance sheet to do insurance.
You don't think they're going to do it even on a small number of cars? You don't think they could insure it?
You can't do it with the amount of cash that they have. $36 billion is not that much.
To insure 100 cars and sort of build up a margin of safety? I don't know.
Listen,
then get a regular insurance company.
Just to let you know, the $36 billion is what they have at the end of the quarter. You want to know what that is like on average throughout the quarter? It's much less than that. I would say less than half of that.
I don't think that's correct. They could self-insure a small number of cars because they would just go to an underwriter to underwrite the umbrella portion of it. They just can't do it across a huge fleet.
Yeah, well,
the same thing Waymo did, which is start small, prove the safety level, and then slowly expand. And then an insurance company wouldn't mind underwriting that. They're not going to underwrite now.
No, sure. No, I'm just wondering why they don't, disclose the data. It makes it more suspicious for the bears.
I can't speak to that.
Right. So, MotorHead and Gordon, for you guys, the Bears. So Tesla's kicked the can here. Well, it's going to be a delay by 12 days or 10 days or whatever it is. All right. So MotorHead, you were speaking to it specifically, and Gordon, you can follow up. But MotorHead, what do you think is going to happen? On June 22nd, wherever they're supposed to reveal, they're just going to kick it again. What's your sense of that, MotorHead?
I don't know how true this is, but I mentioned it earlier, but there's someone that's saying it's now being moved to 28th of June. Mm-hmm. I think they want to do something by the end of the quarter so that they can pad the profits with recognition of deferred FSD revenues, which they can only do if they've sort of cleared a milestone with FSD.
Right.
So that's the first thing. How they'll do it is, it's going to be a dog and pony show, just like they had at the Robo Taxi Day event back in October. They'll have remote operators. They'll have cars driving behind it. I don't know. They'll somehow make it work, and they'll make sure that it's on YouTube. On TikTok and on Twitter and everything. So
they push it, MotorHead. They also could push it. The reality is there's no way that they could field a product on June 22nd or June 28th without you having seen hundreds, if not thousands of rides already happening in Austin, and they're not. There's been they've gone around the block once. There's no freaking way you can launch a service. I drove in Waymo from Google headquarters with a driver that wasn't touching the wheel to Starbucks in 2011. And they were running employees with safety drivers for 5 to 7 years, making thousands of trips a month.
Exactly.
And there's just no way that they can. First of all, anybody who has FSD, and I have FSD, and I've had every version of FSD, FSD is not level 4. So they're not going to have a robo taxi product that doesn't crash. And I think the reason they haven't released the data is pretty obvious. If anybody has FSD, it's because the data shows that the car has interventions at regular intervals. And there's just simply no way around that. And I've heard a few people lately go, oh, the new version's perfect. I haven't had any issues. Well, you know what? You have to pretty much drive for an entire lifetime without an intervention for your anecdotal, joyride to be relevant to safety.
Yeah, Yeah, political. Thanks for saying it, because we all get we all get. It's very seductive. Everyone's got their anecdotes, but that can be highly misleading. If you could just hold for 1 second, political. Um,
Yeah.
Gordon, if you're there, you had spoken about this very thing months ago already, Gordon, about the fact that the thing keeps bumping into something so frequently, and you would specifically were talking about technology standards, the lidar versus non-lidar, and that's why ultimately it's just not going to work, as I recall correctly. Gordon, could you elaborate on that a little bit if you're still there, my friend?
Yeah. Hey, thanks, George. I just really quickly, I wanted to go back to Sam because I asked him a question and he said a lot, but respectfully, I don't think he answered. It spoke in vagaries and platitudes. So AMCI, which is an accredited lab, did another test on Tesla's FSD using hardware 4. And I spoke to the gentleman who conducted the test, and he said it has a safety critical, like accident every 13 miles. That was his conclusion. Um, so to your point, George, and to what Political just said, um, again, I think it's an early Christmas for Tesla bears if Elon Musk releases this. I think Political Reality believes he'll release it. It won't go above 35 miles per hour. The car we saw that Sawyer Merritt, whoever that guy is, put on Twitter, there was someone in the passenger seat, which is a Tesla employee. There was a car following it, and we know it's being teleoperated. You can't scale that. That's
Gordon,
effectively a
what do you
gimmick.
mean? What do you mean by
Yeah.
teleoperated? I keep hearing that word. What does that mean to you?
Well, I don't know. Elon Musk said it. I don't know what it means. We don't know anything because they haven't provided details.
Well,
But
you just
Yeah,
said the part.
typically
What do you mean?
teleoperated does not mean that someone's remotely driving the vehicle. It means that somebody has the ability to remotely take over the vehicle, and they're
Like when?
literally they're watching a set of monitors. Typically it's three monitors
Like when?
that create.
Wait, Sam,
Yeah, like
Sam, 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 hold on. Wait. Sam, I really respect what you have to say, but you can't keep interrupting.
My
Okay.
apologies.
All right. There's a reason people like my spaces because the order in the courtroom. So you've got to just let people talk because when you interrupt, you can't hear them. Okay. So, political, did you finish your point? I got distracted there.
Yeah, no, I mean, teleoperation, it doesn't mean that somebody's remotely driving the car. It means that somebody can remotely drive the car. And typically, it's not in a safety, just so everybody knows, teleoperation in a Waymo scenario is not typically in a safety critical situation. It's typically where a Waymo is parked on the street. There may be construction or police activity or pedestrians not moving, something where the system can make a decision, but it doesn't want to because the inferences suggest that there may be multiple things it should do, and they're kind of evenly weighted. So instead, it does nothing. And what they do is the teleoperator takes the car, pulls it over 5 or 6 feet, gets it out of the situation, and then takes it over. The teleoperator does not drive the vehicle other than to avoid a non-safety critical situation. So safety criticality is going to um, not be addressed by having teleoperation.
Okay.
I think people
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
understand that.
Thank you for explaining that, political, and I think this term I'm glad you clarified that. I don't think we have to dwell on that anymore. But I want to go back. We'll go to Wes in 1 second, but I want to go to Gordon. Back to you, Gordon. Could you just tease out a little bit further, explain the difference between the lidar and the non-lidar systems? I remember you saying some months back that without the lidar, it's not gonna, it won't fly, it won't work. I shouldn't say fly, it won't operate. Could you speak about that, Gordon?
yeah, it's about redundancy. And George, I don't want to pretend that I'm an expert in
Sure.
robots, but I do speak to the experts. I speak to a lot of them. Missy Cummings. Um, there's a guy on Twitter, Green the Only, who a lot of people know, and then there's a couple of other experts I speak to. And let me just make it very simple, right? Let's take it down to elementary understanding. Every car on the road today that has unsupervised, that is an unsupervised robo car, has three forms of functionality: lidar, radar, and vision. Tesla has vision only. So by definition, Tesla will not work until it has lidar and radar. And what you'll get is you'll get people like Sam, and respectfully, these kind of anecdotes that, hey, I drive it and it's great. But and then one other, but my point is, then we look at the data, right? The data is, you know, critical disengagement every 250 miles city, every 400 miles, 450 miles non-city. Whereas a human being's at every 700,000 miles, and Waymo's at 2 million miles. So it's not even close. It's like exponentially worse, right? One other thing I'll say, Sam said, you Tesla bears, or you want people to die. I'm just looking at TeslaDeaths.com right now. 54 deaths on autopilot, right? 2 fatalities involving FSD. So people have already died,
That's not
and
what I
nothing's been done. So
Sam,
yeah. So I'll
please.
stop there. I'll stop there, George.
All right, Sam, if you allow your brief response, then we're going to Wes. Sam, do you want to say something?
No, I didn't say I wanted people to die. I said that the best case scenario for bears would be a catastrophic, obviously at fault crash. There's a big
All right, yeah, all right. Thanks for the clarification. I don't want to get caught up on that. Political, just hold it for 1 second. Let's go to Wes, and then political. I'll allow you to respond. Wes, you got something? Please weigh in.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, George. Yeah. So I'm a Tesla bull, and I want to come up because I'm just hearing, and I mean this respectfully. I'm just having a conversation, but I'm hearing just ridiculous points. Gordon Johnson and political both said that versions 12 and 13 are evidence of this not working. Well, no kidding. That's not the version that's going to be out running around unsupervised. So to say that the FSD tracker is some source of information for you on old versions, and you can declare that it's not going to work, what are you talking about? It just doesn't make any sense at all. And I think it's important because there's bears in here probably that are newer than you all, and they trust you to be able to understand this stuff. And it's odd that you would make the argument that old versions of FSD are not going to be unsupervised. We all know that. So I don't know. I would just say that the teleoperated thing. I think you guys addressed that well. That was another misunderstanding, but it just seems like there's just a lack of knowledge, and it seems like a little bit more effort should be put in to
Okay,
understanding how these things work.
okay, Wes, I respect where you're coming from, but and again, there's I just want to take the heat out of this. Okay, like it's just there's an aggressive way to challenge someone in a respectful way. One of the best interviews I know is a guy named Grant Williams. He's a great guy. He probably is the best podcast out there, and he's a Brit. He's one of these soft-spoken Brits. And so when someone says something that he disagrees with or sounds ridiculous, instead of saying, "Oh, that sounds ridiculous," or "It's outrageous," that's irresponsible, say, "Could you explain that a little bit more for me?" And I think if people address each other that way, we all benefit. So when look, I can scream and yell and be as attacking as anybody, and it's just this has been a fantastic room only because it's been respectful, and I just want to keep it that way. That's all. So, would any of the bears, whether it's Motorhead or Gordon or political or anybody, like to respond to what Wes just said?
Can I opine
I,
first?
I
This is
missed
Gordon.
I missed the first part. So George, could you just repeat? Because for
Well,
some reason space is crapped out of me.
what Wes was just saying basically, and Wes, correct me if I'm wrong, but to paraphrase, the data we have is on the old versions 12 and 13, and there's a new one coming out 14, and so to rely on the old data, it's not really helpful because that's not indicative of what's going to come out with 14. Did I get that right, Wes? More or less.
100%.
Okay, all right. So that's the question.
George,
Oh,
can I
okay.
respond to that really quickly? Just very quickly.
Yeah.
The FSD tracker, Wes. I agree with you. The version that they're trying to roll out in Austin right now is a completely new version. But what has been pointed out by Dan O'Dowd, who of course is biased, but I mean he's right, is that with each new version that comes out with FSD, it goes up for a while and then it goes down in terms of critical disengagements, per mile, or how many
Yeah,
miles to critical.
Motorhead, could you just clarify the critical? So it's improved experience, but then it gets worse again. Just say it
Exactly. So
again. Okay.
yeah, so Waymo does I think 17,000 miles before any disengagement is needed.
Right.
So I think Tesla right now, the last version, the latest one that the customers have, not the one that they're rolling out in Austin, it went up for a while in terms of the number of miles it could drive before somebody would have to intervene so you don't crash or something. And then it started to go down. And in fact, it went down below the number of miles before disengagement needed
Okay.
than the previous version. That's all I was trying to say.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So now, either
Yeah.
political. If you can respond,
Yeah,
Gordon, you can respond.
so a couple things. One is I've driven several 100,000 miles with 13 Tesla vehicles that I've owned personally. We've owned over 20 in my company. I've had FSD, or what we called autopilot, back in 2015. It's a great level 2 product, but I think people don't understand the difference between character, safety, and logistics. And so character with FSD has gotten incredibly good. What does character mean? How smooth it is when it makes a turn, how much better it is at braking, how much wobble it has on the highway when there's issues with lane markings and stuff. It's been a terrific product with respect to that. But character is not safety, and it's a it's misinterpreted to mean that the product is improved from the other two vectors. The logistics vector only applies to a robotaxi. The safety vector applies to all scenarios. And so when someone like Wes says, well, you don't know, and it's a new version, here's what I do know. The distance capability from a camera only system is extremely limited, distance measuring. It's one of the reasons why FSD doesn't see much beyond 150 feet, 200 feet max. Problem is when you're going 70, 80 miles an hour, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Secondly, the problem is the resolution of the cameras is far, far lower than what Waymo has, like an order of magnitude lower resolution. Lastly, the positioning of the cameras is awful. So if you notice on a Waymo, as ugly as it may look, it has cameras on the front fenders, the rear fenders, the roof. They rotate 360 degrees, which gives them that enhanced resolution. Not in terms of megapixels, but in terms of visual resolution, the same way the human eye works. And then they have distance measuring so that they can look and anticipate things in combination with the vision sensors well before they become critical safety issues. There is no way, and I'm happy to be crow, but I don't have to worry because I won't be. There is no way that the current configuration of cameras alone and those cameras and hardware 4, which is somewhere between 1/10 and 1/50, the tops of a Waymo computer, are going to be able to function safely. So in a robotaxi environment. And that's as simple as that. The reason the data is not out there, it's Occam's razor. If you have really good data, you put it out there. If you have shitty data, you don't. What is the reason that you would not put
Yeah.
really good data out into the marketplace?
Yes.
What company
May I
on the
address that?
planet? Yeah. What's that?
Hold on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Wes, I'll let you respond in a second. Political, yeah, the best way, I agree with what you just said. The best way I remember, I can't remember what someone at Fidelity once said years ago, when things are not obvious, they're not obvious for a reason. All right. It's because they don't want you to know. Okay. So, Wes, I think you wanted to respond. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. The reason they'll put the data out is because they don't have to. They are staying at level 2 right now because the requirements, if they were to bump it up to 3 and 4, would require that they release the data. There's not a financial benefit at this moment until the robotaxi actually starts here in a few days or weeks for them to release that information. You wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. No one would do that. And because the monetary value really isn't that high at the moment. FSD sells for $100 a month or $8,000 if you buy it one time. This whole thing's about robotaxi. When they come out with robotaxi here in a few weeks, they will release that data, right? So we're just a few days away from finding that out. Secondly, um, you guys pretty much made my point. You're talking about older software, political. I have a lot of experience with FSD myself, but none of us have the new version. And I don't think you really addressed that point that until we get the new version in our cars, there's really no way to know for both of us, which,
Yeah,
if it's going
but
to work or
that's
not.
like that's silly. I've had 150 updates. All of a sudden, this is going to magically solve all the defects that I see after 6 or 7 miles in the city?
Why
Are you
wouldn't it?
really serious?
Yeah,
Are
100%.
you,
Because you got the old version. Why would you say
the
that
old
you know the new
version,
version?
I've had
Yeah,
150 versions. I've seen regressions all
me
over the
too.
place. You don't
We
you
are
don't
the old
even know
version.
whether
Guys,
Listen,
that's it. Yeah, that's just
George, give me
ludicrous.
one
That's the
second with him.
silliest. Yeah, that's the
Give me one second.
silliest
I'm
argument
gonna.
I've ever heard. Wait, I want to address one more that you made, which is there's no financial benefit into releasing great data that says this thing is safe as shit. What planet are you on?
yeah. I mean, yeah. So,
May I address
look, guys,
George, and then I'll wrap it up with this, if
no,
I
no,
may.
hold on. We can keep going, but just everyone's got to chill. I mean, I've gotten comments in the thing. People say it's the best conversation they've ever heard on Tesla, and the reason is because it's being done respectfully. So I don't really care what you say, bullish, bearish. But anyone who raises their voice or interrupts, they're thrown out of here. All right. So please go ahead. You can respond.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I've been testing FSD since it started. I've got a couple Teslas. I have, 150,000 miles probably on FSD. That doesn't mean I know what the next version is going to do. It's just not a good argument. We'll find out in a few weeks, but to make the argument that the older versions like we have in our cars today are not going to work, well, no kidding. We know that. And then regarding the data, um, I think I made a solid point with that. You guys can try to assume the lack of data is for some nefarious reasons. But again, you'll have your data very quickly. But I would not rely on FSD Tracker for anybody that's listening to this. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Hey,
So
Wes, if you don't mind me saying,
go ahead,
they
Martin.
do. Sorry, George. Um, they do publish. I think every quarter, or I don't know, once a year, um, how much safer FSD is versus human drivers. Except the numbers that they use are sort of distorted. But so they're already trying to publish data. They're just using distorted data for comparing it to other, drivers and cars and whatever. So it doesn't make sense what you're saying. I
Well, let
think
me
they.
agree with you. Let me agree with you if I may. You're right. The data they put out is what I would consider to be of lower value. See, the problem right now is when you're driving with FSD, the driver is ultimately responsible. So it's not indicative of a system that drives itself, right? Because the driver has to take over. So we don't have pure data yet on the FSD system and how safe it is as it relates to unsupervised. And that's what we'll get in a couple weeks. But to make a
I
counter argument, it doesn't
I
make
don't.
sense.
Yeah, no. I actually don't think. I think they'll continue to not publish any data, and I think you actually might have a point. I think it was you who said it that they don't want to do it until they get to level 4, and there's no benefit for them. I don't think there's not having a financial benefit for publishing data is a good reason to not publish it if you're trying to do something that deals with human lives. But the point is that if it's so solid as Musk pumps it to be every earnings call, then why not start revealing some of the data? And I don't know. I just think that they
All
won't.
right. Okay. So listen. So I'm just going to say this. It's clear that shots fired, battle lines drawn. Everyone's heard the bull. And I value everyone's opinion here. As Wes has said, or we'll know in a couple weeks or whenever. I doubt any one of the bull sides is going to convince the bears, or the bears have to convince the bulls. We just have to understand each other. That's all. And I know, like, I suffer from this too. We all do it. You try to make someone else you try to convert them to your, it's not going to happen as long as the point's made, as long as we hurt each other. That's all that matters. All right. And just let's keep it real. Sam, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just one other quick point about safety, because I agree that we don't really have good data unsupervised, that they've only been doing that for a relatively short period of time internally. So, I mean, that's a fair point. But Gordon talks about people who have died using the system, and I feel like that's a bit dishonest I want to say for a couple of reasons. One, just even if all of those people had died using FSD, which is almost none of them, I think it was mostly autopilot, which is a totally different system. It's even if they all had, I don't think it's that high of a fatality rate given the number of total miles on FSD. But my main point is they haven't. I mean, vast majority of those are autopilot, and the FSD ones. There was a whole article I said on Forbes, published I think June 5th, about an FSD death, and it was on FSD 11 in I think 2023 or something. And I just think it's very dishonest to continue to push safety concerns, which are legitimate concerns, by using old stories and old deaths, which does not say they matter, because obviously every death is terrible. But I think that's a fair,
All right,
point.
Sam, point noted. I'm going to let Gordon respond, and then Gordon, and then we're going to go to political for a quick response, and then Howard. Gordon.
Yeah. So again, I'm just looking at the website TeslaDeaths.com, and the two verified Tesla autopilot deaths are sourced to web links. One was in 2024, one was in 2023. Number one. Number two, I think Politico did an amazing job of explaining what the other gentleman was talking about. But it seems like, George, like the bull case is, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Whereas the bear case is, here's the facts, here's the numbers, etc. So I hear you that you hear both sides. But if one side is speaking in vagaries and platitudes and the other side saying 1 + 1 = 2, that's very different. One other thing, if I could. So fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yep.
Fool me every year since 2014. I don't know who the shame is on. There's a video in Elon Musk's own words where he says, since 2014, this is a Dan O'Dowd video where he says we're going to have basically level 4/5 FSD next year, every year since 2014.
Right.
So this idea that the next version is going to be the breakthrough, when their testing that we've seen in Austin is, you have people in the driver's seat, you have people following, they won't release data, et cetera. It's closed to employees. The story has been for years that they have these billions of miles and they're
Right.
leaps and bounds. So, this idea that all of a sudden, oh, you guys can't say it doesn't work because the next version, which nobody has, is going to be the break. I mean, it's just, forget about all the technicalities.
Gordon, I hear you. And by the way, I've tried to keep this down the middle as close as I can. Anyone who
Right.
knows me knows I'm a huge bear on Tesla, but that doesn't mean I can't try to keep it, real in terms of the conversation. So,
But George, I think I tried to. So here's the thing, George. Right, the stock price is high. Right, so
right.
that gives cover to
Well, it's not high right
illogical
now,
and
Gordon. It's
ridiculous arguments.
crashing because it's
But I gave
crashing right
you,
now because of the
George,
Iranians.
I gave you, George, I gave you a reason why the stock price is high.
Yeah,
Right?
Gordon, I agree with you completely. So let's not listen. You and I, we was like a constant laugh session with Michael Kramer 3 months ago in the Bear Fest. You and I, okay. I'm the guy who at 100, even having ridden this short down so successfully, was saying this should still go down. So you don't have to convince me. I mean, Gordon, you know where I stand, okay. All I'm saying is, the bulls are not going to convince you, and you're not going to convince the bulls. That's all. I mean,
Right. No, I hear you, but my point is, like, if somebody sits here and says 1 + 1 = 30, right? We can't really debate that,
I
right?
understand.
But my
Gordon,
point is,
Gordon, Gordon.
Tesla is a levered bet on the
Yeah,
market.
yeah,
So
yeah,
when
yeah.
the market going, the
Gordon.
market going up significantly, Tesla's going to go up.
Yeah,
That's what's happening.
Gordon, I totally agree with you. And I was taught this, actually, Oliver, you didn't ask for it, but I'm going to give you this piece of advice and take it, it's worth what you pay for it, which is nothing. In a situation like this, focus your attention on the audience, speak to the audience, don't speak to Sam, because you're not going to convince Sam, but it's the people who are sitting out there, and there's a lot more than just Sam. That's who you should be talking to, and let them decide whether, you're not making any sense or he's not making any sense, because he's not going to convince you, you're not going to convince him. And so
Well,
just
can
speak
I
to the
say one
audience.
last
That's
thing?
all. That's all.
Can I say just real
Yep.
quick?
Yep.
I want to dumb this down.
Yep.
Again, I think the biggest mistake that Elon Musk has made in years, he just made, and that's putting a due date on FSD.
Well,
Because the gentleman just said, right? The bull just said he's going to release the data in a few weeks.
yep.
I'm willing to bet anyone my life savings he's not going to release any data in a few weeks, right?
Okay.
But my point is, he's given the bulls this hope that he's actually
Right.
going to deliver, right? If I was Elon Musk, I would have delayed this indefinitely
Right.
forever and had the sell side
So
analysts like the Ives. But you get what I'm saying.
yeah,
So
Gordon. You know what we're gonna
that
do.
is the biggest mistake
Yeah,
he's made. He
Gordon.
has to deliver now.
Yeah, Gordon. I'm with you. You know what we should do, Dilly. You should make one of those timer things. Okay, like we need to have another space like this in maybe I don't know 30 days or whatever, just so we can kind of do an update. All right, and we can say
Okay.
okay. All right. So like. What's today? June, whatever it is, 12th or something. I don't
12.
know. I've lost track of it. 12, yeah, okay. So by July 12th, if not
Yep. We'll do
later,
an
all right. We'll do an
update for you.
update. We'll do an update. Okay, fine. All right. So to be fair to Sam, I'm going to let Sam and Wes respond. Howard, just hang for 1 second. And politicals, hang for 1 second. I want to try to keep us neutral. Sam, do you have a quick reply on Wes? We're going to go to Sam, Wes, and then political. Sam?
Yeah, I mean, my last quick reply. I mean, I don't think Elon has put a date on. I mean, they've put a date on when they're going to have their first thing. It's not going to be a big event. The Bears are going to be disappointed. The Bulls are going to be disappointed. It's going to be a slow trickle, just like Waymo did. That's the first thing. If there's the only way there'd be a big hullabaloo is if there was a big accident, which is very unlikely given
Right.
the amount of preparation they're putting into it. I mean, like you said, George, $1 trillion market cap. They're not going to fuck around with this.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
they're not gonna go crazy. And the other thing is, random point, George, if you're in New York, right?
Westchester, yes.
Yeah, my mom. Anyway, I recommend as due diligence, go on Turo, find a 2024 or newer Model Y because that's the best. That's what they're launching it on. Rent the car, pay for the FSD, use it for 500 miles, and then have that due diligence for the next space in 30 to 60 days.
Okay.
All
right. Okay, I got you. Hey, Sam, just one thing. Sam's just, you're muted. That's hold on, Sam, you're muffled. I'll just say one funny story before we go on. Because of the, we're going to West in 1 second. Before we go on, about a month ago on a rainy day, I went to the Westchester Mall, which is a nice mall in this area, and there was like a Rivian store in there, and there was a Tesla store. I think it was a Lucid store. I think they all have them. I can't even remember. And I go in the Tesla store, and because of the rules, because of the laws, and Gordon, you guys all know this. I think in New York and New Jersey, you know, you can't in the showroom. They can't sell you the car. Because of the dealership laws, and so they were happy enough to say, "Hey, you want to go for a test drive? Here are the keys. You can go. There's one downstairs. You can go take it out." But like, I just thought it was odd. It's not their fault. It's the way the screwy laws are in the state of New York. They're not allowed to sell the cars here. So I don't know. I did apropos of nothing. Wes, I really appreciate that. Who was the
Political,
so thanks for that, Sam.
political,
No,
and then Howard.
no. We want Wes for a quick response, then political, and then Howard. Wes?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just make it brief. Um, political, you were making some engineering points that Tesla is unable to be successful with the FSD because of concerns about their hardware. And, if I'm listening to this argument, what I'm hearing you say is that you know better than the Tesla engineers, who are the best probably in the world. And that's a hard argument. We'll find out again in a few weeks. And then secondly, Gordon, I just want to clarify, I didn't say that the data will be coming out in 2 weeks. What I am saying is that when unsupervised FSD is occurring, the burden of providing data is going to be much higher, and they will start producing data. I don't know if it'll come out in 2 weeks, could be 2 months. I don't know, but whatever the regulators need. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Wes. And I appreciate the respectful way in which you made your point. That's even more important than the point,
George, this
actually.
is the best Tesla space.
Yeah, I know because
It's like
I know.
it's a feat that you've accomplished right here.
I understand. Imagine what
Yeah.
we could do with the Bitcoin. Imagine, Dilly, what we could do with the
This
Bitcoin
is like
space.
the peak
If
of
you,
my co-hosting experience right
yeah,
here.
Dilly, if you could get the Bitcoin guys to be as respectful as these people are
Okay,
in
we'll
this
try
room,
that.
I would actually do a Bitcoin room. But the problem is they can never control themselves.
Oh,
Okay,
geez.
so okay, all right. So hold on. What, Dilly? Who's next? Is it political? And then Howard? I think I can't remember now. I'm losing track. I think
Yep.
Yes.
yeah, political and then Howard. Political.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, just yes.
You
Please keep
sound
it brief
great.
Great.
because
Sure.
I keep it
Yeah.
moving, but yeah.
Couple points. One
Yep.
is Wes doesn't know what Tesla engineers know, and I've been developing the most advanced video systems for 2.5 decades. I know more about video. Elon Musk says you know more about manufacturing. Well, I know more about video than almost anyone you'll ever meet. So that's number one. Number two, and I've sold companies that are worth hundreds of millions and even more. So um, that's number one. But that's not the point I wanted to make. The point I wanted to make about FSD is ADAS systems in general, regardless of who supplies them, make vehicles significantly safer. Whether it's FSD in a supervised context, whether it's a GM Super Cruise, all of those systems show greatly enhanced safety outcomes when properly used. And properly used means that you're ready to take over and you're paying attention all the time. Why? Because people text. Well, if you text, it's pretty damn unsafe. And the truth is, a texting driver is a lot less safe than an FSD driver. Very, very fair points. However, we're now talking about a situation that's level 4 or level 5, completely unsupervised. And in that context, some of these accidents may have occurred where people were negligent in operating the ADAS system. That's not really the ADAS system's fault. It's probably Tesla's fault for over promising the capability and safety of the system. But fundamentally, it's a level 2 system, and you're required to supervise that system. And if you do, whether it's FSD or whether it's Blue Cruise or whether it's Super Cruise, it doesn't really matter. You're going to have a safer ride over a group, a large cohort of drivers and miles. That's just a fact. So I don't agree with bears that say FSD is inherently unsafe in a level 2 environment, because it's not, any more so than I believe that FSD is safer than other level 2 systems that are being supervised as well. So we're now talking about a completely different paradigm, a paradigm where you've got car accidents occurring with human drivers at the rate of about 1 per 500,000 miles driven. When somebody says go rent a Tesla on Turo and drive it 500 miles, what it tells me is they have no idea what the requirements are to deliver a level 4 robotaxi service, period. You cannot anecdotally, individually have any context as to whether this product is safe or not. You can tell whether it's not safe by measuring interventions that happen during that anecdotal ride, but the lack of interventions tells you absolutely nothing. So I just want to be clear about how this operates. And that's the most salient point that I think I can make. Your experience that you have without interventions means nothing. The only experiences that actually mean something anecdotally are the ones with interventions. And so on that note, I stand by the fact that the current construct division only, the tops on the hardware 4, the placement of the sensors, all are going to make a robo taxi, other than in a very tightly controlled geofence environment, impossible.
Thank you, Political. You were very succinct and to the point. I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to go to Howard and then Teflon Bust. Howard, good to see you. What's on your mind?
Hey, George. I've got a quick question. I think Political may have a good view on this, and but to any of the bulls or bears. And first, I want to say thanks for this, Brad, Gordon, Political, Wes. This, I think, is the best Tesla conversation I've heard in the last 10 years. So, is this? But Political, you may have a good read on this. What keeps eluding us in this conversation for about the last, I don't know, 45 minutes, something that I'm going to channel our good friend Tommy Thornton for a minute. He would have brought this up right away, and he and I have been, we've been puzzling over this question for many years with FSD. How is video, even with all the improvements, ever going to work on a fully automated, hands-off, no wheel, no pedals scenario without lidar or radar? Can't it? It has always seemed that all the systems that, like Waymo and other systems that are being tested that have gotten that far or appear that they can get that far, rely on radar or lidar to see around corners, see over hills, see through buildings and so forth more um, accurately so that they can navigate more safely. And so my question is that, has anyone seen that that's on the horizon? Because my understanding is that Musk has always been extremely stubborn about even going in that direction and stripped that stuff off of early tests. And is there strong evidence, Political, that this can be done without either? And thanks very much again for the conversation. I appreciate it, everybody.
Political, we're going to turn to you because you seem to be the biggest self-driving nerd, in the weeds. I say it affectionately, not attacking you. So, do you have a perspective on that, Political?
So I don't think video. I don't think it's fair to say that video in and of itself cannot be the primary acquisition sensor in a robo-taxi environment. But here's what I would say. You would need different positioning, a greater number of cameras. You'd need rotational cameras. And then it might be possible. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you couldn't put 30 cameras on a car, put them in the right place, and over enough time get within the envelope of safety. You wouldn't like the way your car looked in the same way nobody likes the way a Waymo looks. So it's not that video. It, I just can't definitively tell you that with n number of cameras, a much more capable computer, more mature software, and better positioning that you couldn't ultimately make vision only work. I can't sit here and tell you that's the case. I don't think it's the right approach because the distance measuring capabilities of video are quite limited. And video has a latency that LiDAR does not. You still have to process the video in a way that, essentially turns the field of view into a series of objects because it's not processing the video natively. It's converting them to objects and then it's essentially labeling those objects and deciding what they are. And then the inference stack is deciding what the next best action is based on what series of objects, placement, how they're moving, etc. So I do think, just to be clear, I do think Tesla, from a software perspective, is as capable as anyone, maybe not more capable than Google, but as capable as anyone and more capable than most to develop soft driving software. But I use the analogy, it's like you go into a Beach King Air that goes, 280 knots. I don't care how much software you put in that turboprop, it ain't flying 550 knots or Mach 1. In the same way, a commercial airliner isn't going to break the sound barrier. Software is limited by both hardware acquisition and processing. They're all woefully inadequate from my perspective right now on the current Model Y with hardware 4 and the sensor suite from ever being level 4. I do believe Tesla will have a robotaxi. I do absolutely believe that. I don't believe anybody who has a car today will ever have that car be a robotaxi. I think it'll take them 3 or 4 years. I think they're going to be forced to pivot. I think they will pivot. It could be under another CEO, it could be under Musk. They'll get there. I just think that the more important issue, and I'm going to stop in 30 seconds because I've sort of rambled on. I actually think the more important issue is the business model. And I think with more and more parties around the world fielding robotaxi platforms, this is largely going to be a race to the bottom. And by the time you get there isn't going to be a whole lot of margin in the business for anybody. And that means that these ridiculous valuation projections based on robotaxi are just completely absurd. So it doesn't even matter if they got there in 3 or 4 years. I don't think the financial model will support any sort of valuation justification to the current stock price.
Thank you, political. All right, so hold on. I'm going to mess the order up here on purpose because I want to alternate points of view. We're going to do what, but since this is like speed dating here, everyone's got to go quickly. No speeches. So we're going to go to Wes and then Howard. Wes, you have a response?
Yeah, thank you. Political, you mentioned that I'm suggesting I know what the engineers are thinking, and I don't. What I do know is the litmus test, which is they feel comfortable that this is going to go live in a few weeks unsupervised. It's simple for me in that respect. Second thing is LiDAR is slower than vision, and here's why. LiDAR sends out a photon to the object and then it comes back. Vision has light on the object, whether it be from the sun, from headlights, whatever, and it comes in. So it's half the time to get the light in. Thirdly, tops, you're not understanding the difference between it seems to me at least, the amount of compute needed for a Waymo vehicle, which has, 20 something sensors, it's going to require more tops than the Tesla vehicle. So it's not a fair comparison to say that it has more computation and therefore it's better. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we go now to Howard with a follow-up, and then MotorHead.
I just wanted to thank Political. I think that's a really thoughtful response. Still haven't never heard that they're looking to rely on anything like LiDAR or radar. And I think it's going to be an interesting development to see how far they do get using all optical, all video tech. And with that, George, I'm just going to turn it back to MotorHead because
Appreciate it. Thanks, Howard. Very good question. All right, we're going to do MotorHead, and then we're doing Teflon Bust.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna. I think it was Politico who said, they will have a robo taxi within 3 or 4 years. I'm gonna just make this point for the same reason why people are saying, oh, Optimus and is gonna, and Musk saying Optimus is gonna be the biggest center of profits for Tesla in the future, and blah blah blah. At what's going on right now in the car business, which is completely being ignored by the market, is pretty unnerving. I mean, if I were a Tesla shareholder, like I said, when things, because it's such a capital intensive business, but when things go awry in the auto industry, things go bad very quickly. And so I think that at current pace, if they don't get to level 4 by the end of next year, there will be no Tesla to build Optimuses or Cybercabs in. I mean, they'll go bankrupt.
Yeah, it's MotorHead. I agree with you, but like right here, right now, I mean, I'm not talking about the next day or week. You're kind of like me. You're looking too far ahead, and that's not. I agree with you. So it's true, but I don't know how relevant it is right now. So point taken, duly noted. Okay, we're gonna do Teflon Bust, and then La Tri Life. Teflon Bust.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Motorhead. Two questions and more just general topics to lean on Motorhead's expertise. But I guess first, I think it'd be great for the audience and myself to get a sense of what sort of permitting does Tesla need to do this launch next week, whether it's local, state, could NHTSA step in? I believe Tesla has a few days to respond to some NHTSA questions. Could they step in and stop this, or do they even have the approvals to go forward? And then the second question, which I think would be really useful for everyone, is eventually at some point too, let's pretend this is actually happening. Tesla is going to become a Waymo competitor. Let's talk about the economics of how that looks for Tesla.
Thank you, Teflon. So
Yeah,
I think
I can answer the permit. I can answer the permit issue if you want.
Yeah. Political. That's why I was going to turn to. Go ahead, Political.
Yeah. So they have within the state of Texas, they have a statewide franchise license for autonomous vehicles that supersedes the local and county taxi licenses that would otherwise be required for a human-driven service. That service has, I think, 3 tiers. One is testing. One is limited geofenced area, and then one is full throughout the state. They have a testing permit from the state. They give it to anybody. There are very few requirements to get it. It takes only a handful of days, which is why they didn't have one, and then they did have one. And to Wes's point, I believe they did wait till the last minute for that because they knew they were going to get it. As far as NHTSA can intervene anytime they want, anytime they believe there's a safety issue. So there's no specific NHTSA requirement per se, but they can address any transportation safety issue with an injunction, with a subpoena. So they've got full authority. I don't know what they'll do. I have a different perspective. I think that Trump is pissed as all hell and he's pretending like he's not. And I think he's going to send his agency heads barreling down the highway after Musk and Tesla down the road. That's my view. What's going to happen in the next few days with NHTSA? No idea. NHTSA's got its
Sorry.
hands full right now with a plane crash and a war. You guys haven't talked about it, but I don't know if you've seen it, but the Israelis bombed all the nuclear facilities.
Yeah. Political. We're well aware. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Let me sort of just sorry. NHTSA cannot do, excuse my language. They can't do fuck all in Texas. Okay. Texas can do what Tesla can do whatever they want in Texas. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, what is interesting though is that there is a bill in the Texas House that is waiting to be passed or approved or amended in the Texas Senate, which will make it extremely burdensome for Tesla to continue their FSD testing there. So that's just something to note. But I mean, with Greg Abbott as governor, I guarantee you, if NHTSA comes in there and says, "Oh, well, this is bad," he's going to tell them, just GFY,
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not you're not actually correct. So under 49 USC section 30101 at sequence, NHTSA has the right to compel suspension of any operations until safety improvements are made.
Okay,
So
okay,
yeah,
that's a very good point. Very good point. I didn't know that, and I hope you're right. But I
whether they
guarantee
will
you,
or not,
exactly,
is a totally
exactly,
different question.
exactly.
But both parties can suspend the service, but NHTSA doesn't license it. They can bar any unsafe activity. Whether they
I know.
will, I have no idea. Yeah.
Exactly.
So just
That's the
be,
point.
yeah,
I agree with
yeah.
you. I agree with you.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that. Okay. Dilly, who's next? Lot Trial Life, I think. I think he or she hasn't
Yes,
spoken. Yep.
yes.
Go ahead. Lot Trial Life, please unmute yourself.
Yep,
The floor is
I'm
yours.
here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you. Go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to something that Brad said earlier about the deaths regarding the FSD is so I've spoke to all 5 attorneys handling these 16 cases across the country. What Tesla is doing is when the detectives go to Tesla to find out if FSD was engaged, Tesla is lying. And I believe, Brad, and you might be able to confirm this, but I believe if FSD is engaged 30 seconds before an accident, Tesla has to report that FSD was engaged. But what's happening is the crash occurs, and within a split second, it is then disengaged. So Tesla is telling that to the detectives. Detectives take that as gospel and then move on. They, as long as they finish their report, they want to get home. So I believe this is, and the attorneys believe this as well, is why he doesn't want this Austin information released. Because if they start comparing this stuff, they're going to find out that Tesla is lying. And the family, and so if the person was killed in these crashes, what can a dead man tells no tales. The family's trying to get the information from Tesla. They're putting up a roadblock. They're lying to the detectives. And so here we are. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Lateral Life. By the way, you guys, everybody who's listening, Lateral Life put out an incredible thread yesterday on.
I posted it to the nest.
Okay.
That was the rabbit hole I went down Motorhead.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
even
yeah, yeah,
read
yeah.
through it.
Motorhead or Dilly, can you please just summarize briefly what was the gist of that thread? Because it's kind of lengthy.
Go ahead, Billy.
No, you can go ahead.
No, you.
Motorhead
It just went through the different lawsuits. I don't know if La Tri Life wants to talk about it.
yeah, Lot Trial Life. Do you want to
Well,
weigh in on that, Lot Trial Life?
sure. I mean, just a couple things there is that, and really, yes, it was long, but it was the last, really my last part of that post. The conclusion is when you have Miss Ark, whoever from Ark, Kathy, and Ives that think that people are, individuals that have a car, a Tesla, are just gonna, the money's just gonna be flowing in is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the amount of the risk to reward liability of if it's your sole car and you have a family and you have a house and now someone's going to get killed, they'll get wiped out. So it's absurd to even think that that's a possibility. And me being a restaurateur for 25 years, my bartenders had more liability. If they served a drink and someone got killed, they get arrested, they go to jail.
Oh
So
my
to
God.
think that, oh yeah, let me just buy 3 cyber cabs and I'll make all this money. It's just absurd. It's a revolving door of litigation. And so, if you've never, I'm sorry.
No, we didn't say
I think there
anything.
was just some feedback.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And then, of course, it's also, I think that's why Musk is delaying this, is because he knows that this isn't ready. I mean, if it was ready, we would have had showtime yesterday or today. So that's it.
Okay, Dilly,
I
who's
think,
next?
sorry
Go ahead.
to interrupt,
Go
Jordan,
ahead.
just really quickly. I think a part of the reason also that they delayed it to the 22nd, or I think it could be even the 28th by now. But I think part of the reason is NHTSA put out a letter to Tesla, and they published it on May 8th. The letter was on May 8th. It came out on their website on May 12th. The point is, Tesla still hasn't answered a lot of questions about from NHTSA about why FSD can't function when it's like foggy, or when they're like driving straight into the direction of sunlight, and things like that, haze. So it's like they never answered them. Like you could see Musk just going, "Yeah, tell them to go, screw themselves." But the thing is, so their Tesla has to get back to them, to this May 8th letter from NHTSA by June 19th. So it could have something to do with the fact that they need to get the answers to NHTSA there by the 19th, and then they can go ahead and go back to testing on or starting the paid robo-taxi service in Austin on the 22nd.
Thank you, MotorHead. Political.
Yeah,
Political?
no. I was going to just say, I had an experience a couple years ago on my Model S where um, it was very warm the day before. It was actually around Christmas. I was coming back from Arkansas to Denver, and the condensation had occurred on most of the cameras, and then it froze. And I was actually unable to use FSD for probably the first 6 hours of my trip. It simply wouldn't work. It gave me the error messages and all the rest of it. So there's definitely issues with vision. I did want to address, the one point I think it was Wes made about LiDAR latency versus cameras. He's actually correct in terms of the acquisition rate, but what he's not correct at all about is the processing rate. So while the raw frame latency is actually lower for cameras, the actionable data around object position classification is typically available much sooner from LiDAR because it requires much less intensive processing. So you got to be careful about talking about latency. You have to look at the totality of the pipeline when you when you make those comparisons.
Thank you. Okay, who wants to speak now? Dilly.
George, I got a quick one.
Yeah. Go ahead, Howard. And then I think Wes wanted to say something. Howard, go
This
ahead.
may be best for Brad because Brad has such the deepest view into the industry, I think, of anyone here. But the liability question that's been looming, and the progression of the technology and the ownership structures in this industry since before Zipcar. I've been wondering ever since, the models like Zipcar were on the drawing board, how much of all of this and how much of the complexities of car ownership get resolved by millions, then tens of millions, then ultimately hundreds of millions of people globally choosing not to own cars and letting the big fleet operators, which will be Google, maybe Tesla, etc., operate giant fleets, deliver cars for rides, deliver cars for months, whatever the flex is in there. I have a background in the leasing industry. We used to do flex leases nobody ever heard of. We just create stuff for whatever a customer wanted. You want different cars for the summer and winter, whatever. We did whatever. So it seems to me that the financing mechanisms, blockchain, all this technology can create a circumstance where we can deliver these things at any periodicity that somebody wants at any level of responsibility or none, from ownership to just, the zip car type model, and that we end up solving a lot of this with corporate ownership and corporate absorption of liability, but also just the day-to-day responsibility of maintaining fleets. And I'm curious, Brad, what you're seeing and hearing in the industry about that at this point.
Sorry, I don't understand your question.
Yeah, Howard,
Okay, sorry.
yeah, Howard, as they say, is there a question?
Yes. The question is, how much does car ownership shift from individuals and small companies to mega fleet operators that will be, say, Google, Tesla, GM, Waymo, whoever?
Okay, good. Okay, now I understand it. It's I think a lot of it. I think a lot of it will. I think Toyota Motors is very well aware of things. They I think were the first ones, and even though I don't think Musk realized it, and therefore went started developing and pumping FSD. I think it was like it was the legacy dinosaur car makers who are realizing that I think I forget what the statistics are, but it's like back in the 1970s or 80s, I think it was like nearly like 90% of teenagers in America who turned 16 got their driver's license. I think right now with Gen Z, it's like down to, I mean, I'm not joking, it's below 50%. So, and this is because of ride-hailing services, taking over. So I mean, the robo-taxi industry is big. It will be big. The question is how profitable it'll be. Who's going to be the leader who sets the sort of, standards? I think it'll be Waymo at this pace. Who knows, But the thing is, yeah, I mean, there's going to be a huge shift from car ownership to fleets.
Right. So Howard, quick follow-up, because then I have a question. Howard?
I was just going to ask if you have detail on Waymo, because it looks, to my view, that Waymo has kind of all the cards, and Tesla's playing a really big hand with narrative, but we're not seeing the big hand really approach Waymo's type of operation. So anyway, it just seems to me that Waymo's best positioned, and that it ends up with very large contracts with manufacturers, and manufacturers lean on Waymo to get this done, because the manufacturers, as you said, have been looking at it for a couple decades that I know of, the question of how to get to big fleet ownership.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why Toyota is entered their partnership with Waymo last month, I believe, and I think and that's why actually Waymo could be really huge if I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to Tokyo, but I mean, they've got more taxis in Tokyo per capita than I think pretty much any city in the U.S. But the point is that whoever sort of gets there first is going to be setting the standards, because there are no standards right now in the U.S. And so that the point is, like, if let's say that the vision only FSD thing that Musk invented becomes workable. I mean, then Tesla will overtake Waymo immediately. So it's like we're in the early stages. We don't know.
Right. Okay, Dilly, if I missed someone. Sam, Sam, your hands
Sam
up.
and Wes have their hands up.
Okay,
I did
Sam.
put my hand up now. I just wanted to address one thing. I don't remember who said it about sort of saying that if you rented the car and drove it for 500 miles, that it's sort of a useless bit of information. And I just wanted to respond to that, because I mean, the point of doing that wouldn't be to say, okay, now I know it's going to work for sure. It's a matter of changing your confidence level. But when you go out and you drive it, when I did it, I brought it to Chicago. It drove me around by Wrigley Field and on the highways to the suburbs through downtown. When you see what it can handle with your own eyes, and you see what it's good at and what it struggles with, which is very little at this point, it just gives you a better view into the possibility of the system actually working, as advertised. Will it? I'm not, I can't predict the future, but it basically brought my confidence level from like, 30% to like 80%. And that's all I'm trying to say. And if you do
Okay,
the same, I
Sam.
may do the same.
Sam, appreciate that. Wes, did you have a quick follow up?
Yeah, thanks, George. Two things, and I couldn't tell who the speakers were. Sometimes you just can't tell who's speaking, but just to be helpful to two of the previous speakers, one of them addressed liability, saying that they wouldn't want to own these vehicles because the liability could crush them. And actually, what's going to happen is Tesla will be responsible. They're the responsible party because it's their software that's driving the car. So Tesla will handle liability when the vehicle is operating unsupervised. Second thing is another speaker said something about, we don't know if it'll be level 4 in the next year and a half. Just for you, so you guys know, us bulls, we don't talk about levels ever. Like the only time I hear levels is within bear conversations, which is fine. All we care about, or all I care about at least, is does it work? Is it fully autonomous or not? And we don't have to wait a year and a half. We're going to find out hopefully in 10 days, maybe a little bit longer. But this is going to be settled pretty quick. Thanks, guys.
Right. Hey, Wes, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, I've been, I hope everyone respects, I've tried to remain very neutral in this, but, I have a personal view, which is I'm negative. So the question that, it's like with a lot of growth stocks and long-term stuff, like at a certain point, at what point, I'm going to ask you to argue against yourself. Okay. What would it take for, I'm not saying, I'm trying to force my opinion. I'm just saying, because you're introspective, he's not like a smart guy, says puts and takes and, risks and rewards. And so what would it take for you to change your opinion? Because it just seems like, to borrow the line from the Brits, it's always kind of like, jam today, jam tomorrow, keep kicking the can down the road. Right. So what would it take for you to say, you know what? Not so much anymore. I'm no longer bullish on Tesla. What would it take? Because if you can't answer that question, then you're not an honest broker.
Okay. I answer that question quite frequently. As a matter of fact, I think this is Grant Belden's favorite question to ask. If you know Grant.
No, I don't know Grant, but I'm glad
Okay.
I'm glad you have an
He's on
answer to
your
the question. That's fine.
he,
That's fine.
he's on your team. Well, often the answer or the question is asked, and how many vehicles need to be on the road before you'd be concerned about it? And the real answer, at least as far as I'm concerned, is the way I see this working is I don't care if they go slow. Safety is number one. If they have 10 vehicles on the road, 20 vehicles on the road, even a month from now, safety is key. But there's going to
Right.
be an inflection point
Right.
at some point, and when they say, you know what, we're safe, now we can scale it, and they kind of just
Mm-hmm.
unleash the fleet.
Right.
I think that that inflection point will happen in the second half of this year or the first half of next. I'm hoping it happens in the first half of this year, but we really don't know. And it also will include, other cities that will allow, in other words,
Sure.
how many cities are going to allow us to scale this thing up quickly? In other words, we're limited, or we could be limited, even though it's safe, if we don't get the regulatory approval.
Right. But Wes, I asked you to argue against yourself. I'm not sure I heard you
Yeah,
answer the
what would
question.
make you
Yeah,
bear it?
Yeah. What would it take for you to be to turn negative on
yeah.
Tesla?
I guess we don't hit that. Great, thank you. I guess we don't hit that inflection point with a reasonable period of time. And I would say that by mid next year. And the reason why I say that is because, look, I anticipate problems. If we don't have any, that's wonderful and it's real easy to deal
Mm-hmm.
with. I also anticipate that the media is going to amplify everything times 10, maybe times 20. And everybody's going to grab onto that, you guys included. And we're going to have to weather the storm. I think we'll have recoverable, I think we'll be able to recover from most of these things unless we have some deaths. And we're going to have some, right? But unless we have
Sure.
consistent deaths, things like that. So that's, if this thing just doesn't take off and hit the inflection point as the answer to your question
Right.
within a reasonable period of time in the next 12 months, then yeah, I'd be
Okay,
concerned.
that's a credible answer, and Dilly's taking notes, and she'll timestamp that as well. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
George,
No,
sorry to
that's
interrupt.
sorry. Who just said that?
That was LA Tri-Life. Can I just make one comment?
Well, no, you can raise your hand, please. I'm sorry to be a dick about it, but we can't have people say, "I just want to interrupt." Sorry, I just can't do it because there's too many people in this room. Let try life. The floor is yours. Please unmute yourself. Let try life. The floor is yours. What's your question or point, please?
Thank you, sir. Wes, just a comment that you made about the liability, and you said that Tesla would take on that liability. That is false. I mean, I spent not a whole lot of money. I spent $3,000 on getting all these documents, complaints, motions. Tesla already drew the line in the sand with these lawsuits, and they're passing the liability onto the drivers, onto the owners. So you can't have it both way, West. That's not Tesla's position at all, and that's in the court documents that I've read. So you're very, very wrong on that point.
Okay, so thank you, Latrive. Wes, and then Sam. Wes, you have an answer?
Yes, the mistake he's making is he's comparing the current software versions, which are still supervised, and using that as an example to make his case. I mean, the bottom line is when it's unsupervised, which we don't have yet, that's when Tesla will assume liability.
Got it. Okay, fair point. Sam, you have a one
I
way?
mean, that's basically what I was going to say. Just that
Okay,
the
good.
reason in those lawsuits that Tesla won't take liability is when you turn the system on, it very, very, very explicitly says you are responsible for everything the car does while the software is running, and you must pay attention. They even still say you have to keep your hand on the wheel, even though that's not technically true because they have the vision-based attention monitoring now, so they watch your eyes. They still say in the text that you need to keep your hands on the wheel, so you're responsible. When they say unsupervised is when the whole story changes, when they can actually do that. And one other point about the auto sales, I see two ways this could go. One way, assuming that the FSD works and they can make it unsupervised in big cities, everyone will either want, and I don't know what's going to happen, everyone will either want a Tesla because commuting sucks, or nobody's going to want any cars because they can just get a ride from a robo taxi. I have no idea which way it'll go. And we'll have to see.
Appreciate that, Sam. Motorhead? Motorhead, please unmute
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah. Sorry. The one thing that I need to stress is that let's say that they get to level 4 by the end of this year and they start the robo taxi service and all that. You also have to ask yourself, if people hate Musk as much as they do, and believe me, I've never seen people hate a car brand because of their CEO this much in my entire career. You have to ask yourself, like, will they actually choose a robo taxi from Tesla to hail a ride? I have a system right now, and I enforce it throughout my family. If anybody takes an Uber or a Lyft and it turns out to be a Tesla, cancel it, and you've got 5 minutes to cancel it before they charge you. So that's all I'm trying to say.
All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna take a breath here.
This has
This
been
has
the
been
most respectful fight.
well, Billy. I wouldn't even use the fight. I'd say discussion. I mean, it's just
I know it has. It's
yeah.
been so
I,
spicy, but so respectful.
no, it's been
I
great.
love
It's
it.
been great. So we'll go for a little while longer. There's so much to talk about, but I'm gonna make a statement that I'm gonna regret. But um,
What, you own a Tesla?
no, this is totally off the reservation. It's probably gonna set off a firestorm. But if the reports I'm reading, usually we never talk about breaking news, Joe. Like, our conversation is usually time insensitive. But what is going on right now is a very big deal with the whole Mideast situation with Israel
Oh
invading
yeah.
Iran. And if the reports I'm reading are correct, this is bullish. This is very bullish because if the reports I'm reading are correct, that they've basically taken out the entire Iranian leadership and they killed a bunch of nuclear scientists and so on and so forth. If they neuter, I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. I see Schmuck is disagreeing with me. I'm not saying I approve it or disapprove of it, but if it's almost by definition, so I say we're going to argue with this. If this instills peace in the Middle East because Iran's neutered, then this is bullish. Now, if in turn you got Russia following on Iran and this and that and everything else, and it goes sideways, not. But I actually, if this is correct, I think Iran looks like they're pretty much taken out, and so um, I think this could be very bullish, very bullish. So if someone wants to push back on that, that's fine. But that's my, we talk about, Captain Obvious, first order thinking, second order, third order. Forget about the Captain Obvious stuff. Well, the price of oil is up, and oh my God, and the hell with Israel, and whatever, blah 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 blah. Um, if this restores some order in the Mid East or an order, I think this could be very positive. And we know a lot of the other Mideast countries, most notably, I got the whole Shia Sunni thing. The Saudis and the rest, they know Israel's not the enemy. They know it's Iran, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Because for the time being, the U.S. has taken their foot off the throat of Syria. So that's kind of like stable for right now. And if Iran can be neutered, I mean, this is very positive. Sam, did you want to say something?
Oh, I just wanted to say, Tesla bull bear is not spicy enough. We should switch to Israel Palestine. Just kidding.
No, yeah, we're not going to go there because it's just there's enough other spaces. But and again, the point here is not to argue about whether you're pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. It's not the point. The only time we really ever talk politics in these rooms is more to figure out the consequence or the financial consequences of what's happening, not whether or not you hate Trump, you like Trump. That's not the point. The point is, if you think Trump's going to do this or that, okay, what are we supposed to do about that? And all I'm saying is, regardless of whether you think Israel was right or wrong to have invaded Iran, I think potentially this could play out in a very bullish way. But we will see what happens.
Can I address what Brad said just before?
Yeah, well, last point on Sam, because I don't want to
Yeah.
keep. I mean, Sam, to be fair, I mean, we're going on 2 hours and 20 minutes, right? Like, I think we're kind of going in circles here. So, Sam, if you have one last point you'd like to make, that's
I
great.
wanted to just address the brand risk point that Brad brought up, that he cancels on the Ubers if
Yeah.
if the
Okay. Yeah.
car
Sure.
doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
My quick point is, I'll make an analogy. They did some kind of test thing recently. I forget who did it, but basically, there's all this hullabaloo about wanting to buy made in America products, yada
Sure.
yada.
Yep.
Someone put up a website where they basically ran a test, and it was like $2 more for the made in America product. People are very, very price sensitive. At the end of the day, people who are more political or hate the CEO, it's marginal, 1 to 2% at most. It won't. It's not going to make a difference. If the product works, if it drives itself, that'll sell it. And that's it. It won't matter.
That's in the U.S. Okay.
And actually, Sam, with respect, I have a very different view than you. I look at what's happened to like Nike or Bud Light or this or that or whatever, and people weaponize their choice of brands and stuff. And so I actually take a very different view. I mean, Nike took a huge hit, Gillette took a huge hit because of the whole toxic masculinity thing, and the whole beer thing. No, there's been huge fallout on some of these things. So I would respectfully disagree.
I don't totally disagree. I'm just saying that I think it's if there's 5 companies that can do the same thing 100%.
Yeah.
You can buy another razor, another
Sure.
beer.
Well,
If they offer a product that nobody else can.
Sam, you know what's interesting? If I can interrupt you, please. And MotorHead can speak to this. We don't have to worry about it, but because we're not allowing Chinese cars in this country, okay? But you look at the dozens and dozens of electric car companies in China, in particular, let's look at BYD. And you look at, let's just take China, okay? Like Tesla sales are falling in China. BYD's sales are exploding. And the BYD prices are like half of Tesla's prices. We had a space about a month or two ago, Dilly will remember this. It's funny when you learn stuff. We had a guy from Mexico. He was an expat living in Mexico. And so I don't know. We just talk about he came in, I can't even remember what the space was about, but he comes in, we're talking. It wasn't about Tesla, we're talking. And he goes, "Oh, I'm in Mexico." And I go, "Oh, fine, okay." So then we really started exploring. He said, "Okay, what's it like living in Mexico? Is it safe? Is it polluted? How's the food? Is it American? What do you notice there? Yada, yada, yada." And in the course of the conversation, we started talking about cars. And Chinese market share in Mexico is already up to 20%. It's about the same, it's probably surpassed by now the US. So Chinese cars are all allowed in. And then we asked him, he's like, and we're like, "Oh, so these BYD things, like, what do they cost?" And it's like, I think he said like $25,000 or something like that. And so they're all over the place. And so, so you want to talk about all these companies, there are plenty of, there are plenty of Chinese companies that can do what Tesla's doing, but they're not allowed in here, right? So this is I don't know, Motorhead, and then I'll go back to Sam, but Motorhead, did you want to contradict me or second the motion? Or Motorhead, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're spot on, George. I mean, the reason why the Chinese are trying to export anything they can, and the government is, by the way, so the cost of components for cars probably like something like, I don't know, 30-40%. And the car makers in China have to pay VAT of 13% on any component they buy.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why they're exporting the crap out of everything they can is because capacity utilization in China right now is industry-wide in the auto industry is 50%.
50?
And so,
are you serious?
yeah. And if you export your car because locals won't buy it, the government will give you a deduction of the 13% of the
Oh,
VAT.
wow.
So
Wow.
it takes the Model Y from a 0% operating margin to 20%.
Wow.
And so that's why
Yeah, no,
that's why
I
people
got you. I
are
got
scared
you.
about that.
Okay. All right, Sam, last comment from you, because we've
Okay.
gone on like quite a while.
That's
Sam?
actually, I mean, I totally agree with your point as far as the bear case for FSD is if the Chinese can, I'm not talking about EVs because the Chinese totally can beat Tesla on the EV side. If they can make FSD, their version of it, work as
Yeah.
well or better, which they're nowhere near it at this point. But let's say they can. That's a great bear case, but remember,
Yeah, but
it's a cult stock.
yeah. All right.
It's a cult stock. They'll just move on to robots. I don't own the stock. I'm just saying
All right.
my point of view.
Okay.
Oh, and one last thing, Brad, unblock me so that we can be friends because I have a March 2026 on my calendar. Tesla bankrupt, and I want to be able to.
I already unblocked you. You've
Okay,
got
perfect.
me blocked.
No, I unblocked you already. We're friends now.
Okay, we're friends.
And Grant, you can do the same if you're listening.
All right.
The
So
world
Dilly
is
has
healing.
Dilly. I'm unless there's anything else we want to talk about, I'm gonna call it a night. I
We
mean,
gotta call
listen,
it a night, George. But this
I
has
could
been
go on for
fun.
hours. There's so many things to talk about, but like I don't want to open up another can of worms. So
I know. I'd need to get another bag of popcorn out. So we got to do this again.
All right, Dilly, we have to start meeting like this, as they say.
Yes.
I want to thank everyone here: Bulls, Bears, Wes, Motorhead, Sam, Teflon Bust, Gordon, Political, Tralala, whatever his name was. I people that weren't here. This has been just phenomenal. This has been just a phenomenal space. Yeah, Tralala. That's like with that letter.
It was
What's
La
that guy?
Life.
Yeah, we're gonna get Trala in with Bellagio and Letterman. Okay,
Yeah,
there you
sounds
go.
good.
All right, all right, all right, all right. So, and Howard, you're out there somewhere. I don't know where you went. All right, this has been awesome, guys. We'll do this again soon.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
all right, take care. Good night. Good night. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks, guys.